Hello my bookish lovelies, Kira here, and today I'm going to be talking about all of, at least the majority of the releases that I'm really excited about for the month of July, because having stuff to look forward to is just so important right now. I haven't done one of these in a couple of months, but I'm trying to get back on track so I can start doing these every single month. I really try to thumb through the lists to see what's coming out, because new possibilities always make me happy, and new possibilities for stories make me doubly happy because being the book enthusiast that I am, and if you're watching this, the book enthusiast that you are, it's really important to have some positivity in our lives. And new books, I really feel give us new possibilities and new places that we could potentially explore. So let's go ahead and get into the releases that I'm really excited about. Also, on another note, I put a list of every single book that I'm excited about in the description below, along with links to Goodreads. So if you guys are interested in checking it out further, you have full accessibility in the description below. I also went ahead and put in parentheses what they are, as far as adult, YA, contemporary, thriller, that kind of thing too, so that it's really easy for you to kind of thumb through the list and see what you guys are interested in. I am not going to be mentioning every single book in that list in this video. I just went through and handpicked the ones that are at the top tier of my list, but all the books that I'm interested in are linked in the description below, so feel free to go ahead and thumb through that list yourself. Also, by no means is this a comprehensive list of every single last book that is coming out in July. These are just mainly the books that I personally am very much interested in. So the first book, by the time this video has gone out, it's already out. It came out July 1st. It's called Find Me by Anne Fraser. So this is kind of a mystery thriller sort of thing with serial killers. If you guys know me and you guys know this channel, I like reading about serial killers. I'm not always in the mood for it, but it's definitely a genre that I'm really interested in. So basically, there's this convicted serial killer, Ben, and he has volunteered to finally lead the detectives to all the grave sites of his victims. But there's one catch. He'll only do it for the FBI profiler, Rennie, who also happens to be his estranged daughter. So what's kind of interesting about this is originally, Rennie's father, Benjamin, who is the serial killer and the main object of this, actually used to use Rennie to help lure female victims to their demise. So I think that was a really interesting twist on that. And so Rennie is really flooded with all of these really bad memories from her childhood. I think this book sounds really fantastic. I think it sounds like a mixture of almost like a Hannibal Lecter kind of thing, but with a father-daughter relationship versus a male-female almost sexual relationship. If you guys have read any of the Silence of the Lambs books, you guys know where it went. But when I first saw this, not only is the cover beautiful, but when I first saw this, I was just really intrigued by the whole premise for this. So this is definitely one of the books that I really think I'm going to be picking up hopefully as soon as I can, because TBRs, guys, are just, they're forever. So there are a ton of books coming out on July 7th. I am just so excited. So the long-awaited Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green is going to be released. It is the second book and the sequel to An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. This book series is just so intriguing. I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing about almost 2 years ago. I actually did do a review for that 2 years ago. I don't remember if it was that good because I was just starting out with YouTube at that time, but I really enjoyed it. So basically there were these giant alien statues that appeared all over the world called the Carls. And this girl who was kind of into social media, she caught it on camera at just the right time. And she ended up getting a lot of popularity from it. Now, because of this popularity, she ended up kind of becoming really famous. And what I really enjoyed about the first book, especially, because I'm not really sure how the second book is going to pan out with everything, but it really discussed internet fame and fame in general, which I thought was really fascinating. It also discussed kind of a little bit about the mob mentality. It really went into so many things. It is a science fiction contemporary because it is set in modern times New York, but with a sci-fi twist. It is so fascinating, and I absolutely loved it when I read the first book, so I am out of my mind so excited for this one, and I really think you guys should pick this up because it was just so intriguing and so good. So there's another book that I have seen around a lot, and I am just really intrigued by it, especially by the premise. It's called Girl Serpentthorne by Melissa Basher-Doust. So basically it's kind of like the Midas Touch, but it is a YA fantasy that deals with a girl who has a poisonous touch. And Soraya, our main character, has lived her life away from her family, and basically, like, you know, she was only really had the gardens to keep her company. So her twin brother is getting ready to have a wedding, and she has to decide whether or not she's ready to step outside and kind of meet people again. Also, there is a demon in the dungeon that could potentially have the answer to her freedom so that she will be able to no longer have this poisonous touch. Then there's also a boy who is not afraid of her, so I have a feeling like that we're going to be having some sort of a love interest in this. But from what I've heard, this is going to be also really, really good, and I'm really excited about this one as well. So we are now getting into the time of year where getting closer to October, where thrillers are just kind of like a big thing because, you know, like spookiness and stuff. So the author of The Whisper Man is now coming out with another book. It is called The Shadows. It's by Alex North. It's also coming out July 7th. So this is basically about a killer who had struck 25 years earlier, and he had done a level of murder like that amounted to infamy. Now we're in modern day, and there's a copycat killer that is doing the same exact kind of murders that Crabtree did 25 years earlier. Now, this gets really, really spooky from here on out. So our main character, Paul, knew Crabtree, and the Crabtree, the murderer, and his victims, and he had to slowly put his life together. But now his mother is going senile, and he has to come back to kind of face everything. Now, the really scary thing is 25 years earlier, when Crabtree had committed those crimes, he disappeared shortly afterwards. This is so exciting. Not to mention, this cover, guys, like, the second I saw this book, I knew I had to have this book based solely on the cover. And yes, this is a cover buy, but the storyline like itself after I got acquainted with it sounds really, really amazing. Like, once again, serial killers, but it sounds so incredible. So many good releases in July. Another book that I'm really, really excited about for July 7th is Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Byron. It's been 200 years since Cinderella has kind of graced the presence of this kingdom, but like right now it's kind of like a monarchy where the girls are expected to go to the ball so that the men can select wives based on the girls' finery. 16-year-old Sophia would much rather marry her friend Erin than parade in front of all the men and be selected for a wife. Sophia makes the desperate decision to flee the ball, and come to find out she ends up in Cinderella's mausoleum. From there she meets Constance, who is the known descendant of Cinderella and her sisters. From there they vow to bring the king to justice. This is a fresh take on Cinderella, and it just sounds so wonderful. And I really like the cover. Like, it kind of like gives me a little bit of zombie vibes, which I like. So really excited. The next book that is coming out on July 7th is actually an adult fantasy by Joe Walton called Or What You Will. Now this is kind of interesting. This is another like one of those books that follows a character that kind of, I believe, knows he's a character. And he knows he's a character in the mind of Sylvia Harris, who is 73 years old, an award-winning author of 30 different novels. And this character has played a part in most of those novels. He's been a wizard, a lover, a thief. He's been a dragon with a boy on his back. But Sylvia is not going to live forever, any more than any person will, and he's kind of trapped inside of her. When she dies, so will he. But now Sylvia is going to be starting a new fantasy novel, where it's going to be a trilogy for YA readers. Of course, this character has a part in the story once again, and he has an idea that will allow him to continue to live even if something happens to her. There's just something so magical about this book that really just kind of intrigues me, and I like the idea of a character living on long after the author has passed away. So I'm really kind of curious to see like where they go with this. It just sounds like such a beautiful story about a character's want to survive and kind of taking on a life of his own. And I think it sounds just like a beautiful journey that this character has taken with this author, and just this longing to live and be a separate entity in the world. And I feel like that there could be like so many metaphors for that, like as far as like literature goes, you know? So this was like one like that really just sounded so enchanting. We are now going to be moving on to July 9th. Loveless by Alice Oseman is coming out, another Alice Oseman book. I've actually only read Radio Silence by her, which I really, really loved. but I'm really excited about this also. And actually, this is one of my most anticipated books of the year. Georgia is a fan fiction obsessed girl who's never been kissed, she's never been in love, and she's getting ready to go to college. Georgia is now far from home and she is ready to find some romance. So in her quest to discover love, it kind of wrecks like a lot of things for her friends and the people around her, and she starts to question why love is so easy for other people and not for her. Now she starts to get terms kind of thrown at her, asexual, aromantic, and she is more confused than ever. Now the question is she destined to remain loveless, or will she find love lurking in all the places that she didn't look? This book is about the journey of self-acceptance and finding love in the places where you least expect it. We are now moving on to July 14th. So you guys all know that I love House on the Cerulean Sea. Anybody that has watched any of my most recent videos or any of my videos like in the last few months knows how much I love that book. Well, the author of that book, TJ Klune, is coming out with a YA book, his very first YA book, on July 14th, called The Extraordinaries. This book is a queer coming-of-age story about a fanboy who has ADHD and the heroes that he loves. Now the superheroes are called the Extraordinaries, and he actually writes fan fiction for them, and he's one of the best known fan fiction writers for this fandom. And then he actually has this really lucky chance encounter with one of the biggest stars of the fandom, and he's just completely smitten. This actually has been described as Fangirl meets Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and I am so here for this. It just sounds so wonderful. And if I end up loving this even remotely as much as I love House on Cerulean Sea, this will be another book that you guys will hear a ton about. I've already pre-ordered this book. I'm just so excited for this. I think it's going to be wonderful. Okay, so there's a book in this list that I have been waiting too long for. Dang you, Jim Butcher, for making me wait this long. It's Peace Talks by Jim Butcher. It is book number 16 in the Harry Dresden files. I always make a point to listen to these on audiobook because it's actually narrated by James Marsters, who was Spike on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He is Harry Dresden. He does the voice so well. I cannot imagine ingesting this series any other way. I love the Dresden files so much. They're so extremely entertaining. And every time you think they can't get better or more complex, they do. Every book in that series ends up topping the book after it. And I seriously think that everybody should just indulge in these. What's really great, what I'm really excited for too, is he's coming out with a second book in September for the Dresden Files. He makes this wait all this time and suddenly he has 2 books out in 1 year. I am not complaining. But what I'm really concerned about is when are we going to get the next book? And he better not be ending this series, because as long as I waited, I want this series to just go on forever because it's just so wonderful, and he always figures out new ways to really impress me and just make me feel so a part of this. This series is so in-depth and is so much world building that they actually have an RPG tabletop game for it. It's just such a wide, beautiful, wonderful, fascinating world about Harry Dresden, who is a Chicago wizard. It's adult urban fantasy, and it's just so much fun. I really love Harry. Gush over with, but I really just had to get that out because I have so much repressed Harry Dresden, that I haven't had Harry Dresden forever, because when I had started listening to that series about a couple years ago, and this was before I actually started my booktube channel, I devoured all of it. And I got so many other people to devour this series also, and every person that I got to devour this series has loved it. So if that says anything about how awesome it is, I don't know what will. So we're going to continue on with July 14th, and this book is The Fell Dark by Caleb Rohing, and this is another urban style vampire story. August, our main character, really hates algebra. But what he hates more than algebra is living in a vampire town. Fulton Heights is practically an electromagnet for paranormal activity. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this annoyingly hot vampire boy comes to August and has a cryptic message for him. So this sounds like this is going to be an LGBTQ plus male-male romance. And there's this ancient and terrible power that is returning to this town, and August is the only one who can seem like he you can stop it. It's definitely different, and it's already got a 4.23 stars on Goodreads, which is pretty high, so that's like another like reason like why I was kind of drawn to it. Once again, I really love vampires, so I was really kind of curious about this one. We are now moving on to July 21st. First book of the year of The Witchling by Alexis Henderson. It is described as a young woman living in a rigid, puritanical society discovers dark powers within herself in this stunning feminist fantasy debut, and it is an adult fantasy. Emmanuel Moore's very existence is a blasphemy. Her mother's union with an outsider from a different race has kind of cast her family like into a lot of disgrace. So Emmanuel does her best to follow the Holy Father, be devout, and basically like just try to be the perfect person like in the society. A mishap lures her into the woods, and she ends up coming across like all of these spirits that had died from previous witch killings that had taken place years before. Well, she ends up stumbling upon her mother's journal, and her mother had died previously, and she is shocked to find out that at one point Emmanuel's mother had also sought sanctuary inside the woods. Through this journal, she learns really grim truths about her church, and she realizes that the only way she's going to start changing things is if she starts changing herself. This book just sounds really fantastic. It is, of course, like the adult fantasy. It's going to have witchcraft in it. I saw this, and once again, the cover is beautiful, and there's going to be so many cover buys in July, I think, but I'm really excited for this. I think it looks gorgeous. The next book also is released on July 21st. It's Axum's End by Lindsay Ellis. It takes place in the fall of 2007 during a well-timed leak that kind of shows like the US government probably had contact with alien life. Cora is doing literally everything that she can to avoid it because the legacy that her whistleblower father had left for her has kind of like left her reputation and of hers and her family's tainted. But because he whistleblowed, he's also kind of considered a celebrity, and she has had a lot of the spotlight on her by default because of that. She doesn't care if the leaks are a hoax, she just wants nothing to do with it. But the press kind of start to pressure her once again as things like start to materialize, and she realizes like that the government has been having contact with aliens. And actually this contact with Earth and the terrestrials has been going on for decades. She realizes the extent that her and the general public have been lied to by their government, and she decides to try to make contact with the aliens once again, not as a whistleblower, but as an intermediate kind of communication between her world and theirs. This communication between like her and the aliens will change everything that she knew about being human, as well as having like this eye-opening experience like that kind of just changes everything for everyone. It's an adult science fiction and it sounds really interesting, so I definitely want to read this as well. We are on July 28th and I have a top release that I am really excited about for this day also. It's called This Is My America by Kim Johnson, and it is about the racial injustice that goes on in the United States. 17-year-old Tracy has been having this communication with an organization called Innocent X. She's trying to see if they can help her father, who has been on death row. After 7 years, Tracy is running out of time. Her father only has 267 days left before he is executed. Then the unthinkable happens. Her older brother Jamal is arrested by the police because he is labeled as a thug on the run and accused of killing a white girl. Tracy decides to go ahead and investigate what really happened between her brother Jamal and Angela, the girl he is accused of killing. And as time goes on, Tracy actually uncovers a lot of racism in this Texas setting, and she's not sure like if her and her family can really handle like all the skeletons like that are involved like in this Texas setting. This sounds really, really amazing. It sounds like a crime mystery sort of thriller, but also kind of like fighting for racial injustice that is so predominant in our judicial system. It sounds really amazing, and I've had my eye on this book for quite some time. So those are the top tier books like that I'm really interested in. There are actually quite a few more that I really kind of like looked at in passing, but if I labeled all of them, this most anticipated releases video for July would probably be over or close to an hour long. So I just went ahead and labeled the ones like that I'm really, really excited for. The complete list, once again, is down in the description below with links to Goodreads if you guys are interested. And in the little brackets, it also tells you whether or not they are YA fiction, fantasy, all that, so you guys will be able to have that at your disposal for easy access. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this video, hit the little like, hit subscribe, the little bell icon if you guys want to receive emails every single time I post. I'm on Amazon, Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram. Those links are linked in the description below, and I will see you guys again very soon.